Hello and welcome to the BurnCast. I'm Brady Byrne.
And I'm Kim Cass.
Today we're looking at a book called A Bucketful of Bullets, a Dominick Long G-Man story by author Paul Bishop. As always, any criticisms directed towards the authors and works that we discuss are exaggerated for entertainment purposes and are not meant to be taken personally. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show. Let's talk about A Bucketful of Bullets.
Let's talk about A Bucketful of Bullets. And I really feel like we have to say the whole title every time we say it, because it just just not good enough if you just...
Yeah. So let's talk about A Bucketful of Bullets, a Dominick Long G-Man story.
Let's talk about it.
So this is another book that we decided we'd talk about. However, if you listened to our last episode, you might know that we had the plan of only one of us reading a story and the other one reading a different story, and we would kind of combine our discussions into a longer one. However,
this book was just too good.
This book was just too funny for us to split it as me discussing it and Kim discussing something else. So we both decided to read it. And boy, am I glad we did.
Oh, yeah. So
let's talk about what we read. What is A Bucketful of Bullets? It's a really short story. It's not a book.
It's definitely a short story. A story cut short, I would also add. It feels like that.
Yeah, and we'll get to the structure of the story in a bit. But to start with, I read the first chapter of this story on the Amazon Look Inside feature and immediately bought it. The opening scene of this story, I won't call it a book because it's not a book, is hilarious and so over the top that I was like, man, this is going to be a wild ride. But it kind of wasn't. And that's why I think it's so interesting.
I mean, to me, it really felt like, someone that the author has skills and they know how to write. But this seemed more of like they just had these images or like movie images in their head and they wanted to get those things out. And he just sort of did it, and it's not a book. It's just not a completed book.
Well, it's not a completed book because basically there's no ending. But we'll get to that. We should really start off with who our G-Man is. Who is Dominick Long, our G-Man?
And for those of you who don't know what G-Man stands for in this particular setting, it means a government man.
Yeah.
It's a term that was used for federal agents and things of that nature.
Particularly like a FBI special agent or something.
Yeah. But it is funny to say it G-Man because it just doesn't sound right in the modern age.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. So, I mean, we're given a location, Kansas City, Kansas, June 1940. And we are given a very clean look at who our G-Man is. It says Dominick Long, all 5 foot 8 inches, 130 pounds of him, wearing a gray shark skin suit and a black fedora. More than serious. If that doesn't sell you on who Dominick Long G-Man is, then I don't know what will. Now, perhaps even more importantly than Dominick Long, because, he's in the title of this story. But he's really not the main character, is he?
No, not at all.
Why don't you tell me who the main character, or rather I should say characters, are in this story?
Oh, well, that would have to be Bessie and Belle, Dominick Long's twin Thompson submachine guns. I'm sure they get I'm pretty sure they get a whole chapter, or at least a whole half a chapter just describing them, how excellent they are. And he returns to their description more than once. It really gives them a good going over.
And, the funny thing I noticed about this is it's constantly telling you how they're his twin Thompsons. They're his girls. He feels most comfortable when they're wrapped under his arms. It's very intimate. It's very romantic in the narration. However, they're not really twin Thompsons because he uses like a heavy round drum for one of them and then like a regular magazine for the other. So they're not twin Thompsons. That's like the whole point of the story, and it's not even a thing, really.
It's like having two really nice shoes, but one is laced and the other is not laced, Why would you want one to be inadequate compared to the other? I just don't know. And the entire time, Dominick Long, he's a very angry man. He's very upset about the loss of his lover.
Yeah.
And he's constantly doing things like baring his teeth and slamming a desk and pulling on his fedora as tight as he can, He can't do something normally. He has to do things excessively.
Yeah, you get a brilliant snapshot of who Dominick Long is. And the opening scene is just a crazy shootout between him and the villainous robber Ratchet Briggs and his Ratchet gang of gun cells.
It's a classic 1940s cops versus crooks shootout in front of a bank.
Yeah.
Apparently all the other FBI agents, they went to the wrong Kansas City in Missouri because they thought that bank was going to be the one to hit, and only Dominick Long.
Yeah, only Dominick Long was smart enough to know that Ratchet Briggs and the Ratchet gang would hit Kansas City Bank, Kansas, and not Kansas City Bank, Missouri.
Yeah.
And so all the other FBI agents are off
across state lines. Yeah. And before we say that it was only Dominick Long, it wasn't only Dominick Long. No. He also had Bessie and Belle there, obviously.
Yeah, which is really all you need. You know, you don't need an entire squad of trained FBI agents when you've got twin Thompson.
No, what?
We are really hammered into the idea that Dominick Long is a fucking badass.
And you get some real flavor, like Bessie and Belle cutting the legs out from one of the robbers. I love that visualization because...
Yeah.
When has that ever happened to someone that their legs were shot off below their body? Like,
yeah, like you could just imagine them being obliterated and he's just falling to shredded kneecaps.
Yeah. It's a trend with Wolfpack Publishing to lead strong with a gunfight in the beginning of their books.
Yeah, so I mean, we can talk about Wolfpack Publishing. This is another story published that shares space with China Strike, which is an amazing, epic saga of vigilantism and American heroism.
All you have to say is MIA Hunter, and people will already know what you're talking about, all right?
Yeah, they flock to the bookshelves instantly.
And this book comes with the same problems as other Wolfpack Publishing books, like grammatical, spelling errors. They're all in there. They're all fun.
Yeah, they're everywhere. There's S's missing after apostrophes. There's words in past tense that are supposed to be in present. There's things just plainly misspelled, sentences that aren't complete, like they're missing a subject.
All the juicy good things that you love and expect now from Wolfpack Publishing.
But Kim, would you enjoy these books more if they were clean and if you weren't constantly reminded that you are reading a book? Do you really want to be transported to this world where the names of the guns and the calibers that are contained within are way more important than the characters we're supposed to be seeing developed?
I honestly really loved this book. You know, it has this unique quality of that you know it's silly, but the author takes it seriously.
Yeah.
And so it creates this unique sort of contrast where you can't believe it.
That's what makes it so enjoyable, because you can really tell that he enjoyed writing it. So that electricity comes off the page and you enjoy reading it. Now, I was feeling a bit tricked by this book because this opening scene is epic. Bessie and Belle are chattering death at the Ratchet gang. People's legs are getting shredded. Ratchet's gun jams. There's all kinds of crazy things happening. He escapes in a vehicle of some sort.
Yeah, and you get this opening scene where his gun jams and then he picks up his submachine gun, Ratchet Briggs does, and he launches it like a spear.
Yes, that part is amazing.
He launches it like a spear and Dominick Long has to dodge it. Like, literally dodge the lancing gun coming towards him.
Yeah.
I like to think that if he was struck by it, he would have been impaled. The gun was traveling fast enough to spear him.
I mean, yeah, you have to wonder, like, how close can he be? You must be right in front of them then.
You certainly can't spear it. That thing's not going to fly through the air aerodynamically towards your target and impale them. No.
So you have to wonder how close they are together, and it really kind of makes the scene a bit smaller if they're within range to where he can lance a submachine gun at him and it'll actually be a problem. Like, it's gonna pin him to the street.
Ah, man, Ratchet Briggs, though, he's a professional criminal. I'm sure he's lanced a few people with his gun before. No doubt.
So Ratchet hops in a Ford and leaves, and Long hops in his Hudson to give chase. Now, an opening scene like that, you're like, fuck yeah, this story is gonna be wild. It's gonna be action-packed. It's gonna be just chaos.
Yeah.
And then there's only one other shootout in the whole story at the very end. Because the rest of the story is pages and pages and pages of character description, exposition, and telling you what happens between the scenes you don't get to read. So it's really front-loaded with this action-packed stuff. And then there's just nothing. So I did feel a bit tricked when I read it. Because you have, okay, chapter 2. You think, okay, that's a really quick scene, that chapter 1. It's only like a couple paragraphs. You think, all right, the next scene, we're going to see Long giving chase in his Hudson. There's going to be like a shootout on the street, maybe. Bessie and Belle are going to be hanging out the side windows, chattering death at Ratchet Briggs. That doesn't happen. Chapter 2 is like 3 months later. Dominick Long is going on administrative leave because it's told to us that the end of the encounter in chapter 1, Dominick Long chased after Ratchet. They captured him. And then on the way to the prison, someone crashed the van and helped him escape. And it's like, where's that scene? I want to read that scene.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to read, he's in the office now and he's, give me your gun and badge and office politics. Like, that's what's actually in the scene. And everything interesting that's happening in the actual story, we don't get to read.
But really what this book is at its core is you get Dominick Long's side and then you get the newspaper article hits, which I thought was actually, right in the alley of the story. I thought that was a good thing, and you get this Jericho, the newsman, and he writes these flashy pieces, and he's using purple prose, apparently, because if you ask me, the prose wasn't too purple, but that's what it says it is, so that's what it is.
Well, see, I noted down, because, a big part of this story is that there is a flashy news reporter who uses the exploits of Dominick Long, which are often epic and dramatic, to push his papers.
Yeah.
He oversells the victories and downfalls of Dominick Long for his own personal gain. So we get these news reels just as part of the narration. This is really just cloaked exposition. And the characters reflect all these newsreels and say like, oh, he's so overdone. He overwrites. His prose is so purple. And you would think that this is an awareness by the author to say that, yeah, I know this is overdone, and I'm containing my purpleness to a part of the narrative so that I can be flashy and be flowery. You can do that with, like, epistolary novels. You can have a character write in their journal for a scene, and this can really give you a closer look at their thoughts without having to put it in the scene and have them discover these thoughts as they have them.
Yeah.
However, there's almost no difference between the purple prose in the newscast and just what's happening in the actual narration.
Oh yeah, it's exactly the same. And the book is set up so that you have this Dominick Long does something, and then Jericho writes a piece about it, and then Dominick Long is furious that Jericho has done this, and back and forth.
Yeah.
And then gunfight at one end, gunfight at the other end. Story.
Yeah, it's sort of like a sandwich, this story, I mean, one of the things that bothered me again is everything interesting happens off page. And it's the same with the newscast. One of the main aspects of Dominick Long's motivation, because he is a character. He needs a reason to be such a ruthless G-man. He has a lover named Tess, who I guess was the previous lover of Ratchet Briggs.
A gorgeous singer. And it's like you said before, everyone in this is just like the ultimate version of whoever. Ratchet Briggs is the ultimate criminal, and Dominick Long is the ultimate detective, and his wife is the best singer in the world.
Yeah, the best singer. There's really never any middle ground with these characters. They're always an extreme. She ended up getting killed by Ratchet, and so now Dominick Long wants vengeance. But all of that takes place, like, between chapter 1 and 2. All of that character development, all that stuff that's like your story and your character just doesn't happen. We don't see it. It's really bizarre.
And so I think that all in all, this story it's wearing a mask of itself.
Yes.
For a better word to say, it really is. It's like, look at me. And then you turn the page, you get to the next chapter, and then it's like, there was story here, but now you're past that.
There's like just constant suggestion of a much more interesting story going on behind what you're actually reading.
Yeah. And this is a standalone piece, so it's not the 16th part in a story or something like that. No, this is a standalone. And I really, as much as I enjoyed what the parts of the story that I would still count as the story, the first chapter and perhaps the last one, I don't feel like it's just empty in the middle.
Yeah.
I feel like, what happened?
Yeah, exactly. There's a point where Dominick G-Man wants to confront Jericho about the exploitation of his life and his news. And there's a part where he's, I'm going to blackmail you with some information I have about you. And he's like, I'm going to have this conversation with him. And then the scene ends. And then the next scene is after that conversation from the perspective of the newscaster.
Yeah.
Who, I can't believe that Dominick Long, that bastard, he's going to exploit me. It's always like the fallout, like the boring reflection of what just happened.
So the story is definitely in a section of its own of undeniably hilarious, but also disappointing,
Yeah, but that said, it's not boring.
Well, if you lead with something so strong and then you follow it up with that.
Yeah, it's pretty boring in terms of content, but it is still funny as hell to read because that writing style is present everywhere. And that's kind of why it's so funny, is it's this crazy over-the-top action scene style writing.
Yeah.
But applied to, like, nothing. Just like people talking in an office or Dominick Long rolling down the street in his Hudson thinking about who might be his tail.
Yeah.
For a story that is not shy about it having barely any characters, barely any character development, a very thin plot, in place of where character development would be, it's giving you a summary.
Yeah. And you said that before, actually, when we were talking about it, that this book isn't really so much a book as it is a summary of a book.
Yeah, it really reads like that. There is really like a lot of sections where characters are just reflecting how they feel about other characters. There's another police agent who doesn't like Dominick Long because he always steals the spotlight. His name is Whip Carson.
Whip Carson.
And so when Long is riding down the road to go after Ratchet Briggs, he's being pursued by a car. And he reflects on, Long knew the car. He knew who drove it. In love with his own image, Carson couldn't stand not to be in the spotlight. It doesn't spend any time giving us a reason why we should think Carson wants to be in the spotlight. It just tells us Carson wanted to be in the spotlight. He always hated how Dominick Long was always in the news and he never got his chance. Those are like the actual sentences. There's no, Carson reads the newspaper and clenches his fists at reading. Nothing like that. It's,
no.
It's really, just like a bunch of character biographies for really paper-thin characters smashed between two over-the-top
fight scenes, yeah.
Yeah.
And really over the top, why can't these stories have a more subtle approach to gunfights and things of that nature? Because a gunfight is a serious thing. It's usually so climactic, and you don't want to be copped by a bullet. But in these books, when someone whips out a gun, they lavish it. They're loving it. And every time the guns come out, it's amazing.
No time spent on character development.
The guns get character development.
Yeah, the longest scene in the story is when G-Man Long is like preparing to go out to his car, and it's like 6 pages of where he's holstering his .357 and his .45, and like it's going in the boot holster, and this one's going on his shoulder, and he's gonna unleather that later. Like,
he talks to them and he makes sure that everything about them is taken care of, and I really just wanted more of that, I know that's bad writing, but that's what I read in the beginning, and that's what I wanted all the way through, and that's not what I got.
Yeah. He goes out to the car and got Bessie and Belle in the trunk, and he says, "Hello, my beauties," Long said, placing his hand on them in a light caress. He felt his thirst for vengeance overcoming his desire for justice, and tried to check his emotions. It is really ridiculous. He takes out Bessie and says, "How are you feeling, Bessie?" Takes a 50-round drum magazine from the trunk, slaps it in, gently secures her on the passenger seat. Then he goes back to the trunk and takes out Belle, the other Thompson, and says, "Always read for action, aren't you, Belle?" I guess that's supposed to be ready, but doesn't matter.
Wolfpack Publishing, top notch.
And then it describes how he fastens the 20-bullet magazine into Belle's kill-hungry belly. And then the scene ends with him saying, "Time to go to work, girls." Like, you get way more character development on these fucking machine guns than you do on Tess, the fiance, on Ratchet Briggs, the bad guy, or G-Long, whatever his name is.
G-Long. You can call him G-Long from now on. That's good.
Or Jasper Pollock, our police guy. I don't know what he is. He's They're supposed to be in the FBI, but they really kind of operate like a small town police station.
Yeah, it does operate like that.
But it doesn't matter. You know, you've got a police guy, and then you've got Whip Carson, who is the other special agent who doesn't like G-Long, and then perhaps he would do something to compromise G-Long's popularity or possibly his life.
Yeah, everyone seems content with taking their enemies out of the picture in the story, which is also funny because if your colleague at work was doing better than you or something like that, you don't plot to kill him.
Yeah, no. But they do in this story. And one of the funniest things about this chapter, I also remember now, is that you could get the idea that Dominick Long is kind of like naming his fucking machine guns and being so intimate with them is like a part of his character and that sort of thing. And it only comes through in chapters narrated from his perspective. But no, that's not the case. When Pollock is discussing how, oh yeah, I put Long on administrative leave, but it doesn't matter because we know Long is going to go after Ratchet Briggs anyways. And Carson's like, why didn't you take his badge and gun? Pollock's like, well, Long is a hero. Even if I take his badge, he's still got those twin Thompsons, Bessie and Belle.
Yeah. It's like, what can you do to stop this man?
Yeah.
Like, he really throws in the towel and says, there's nothing I could do to stop this. He's got those twin Thompsons, you know?
And the newscast does the same thing. FBI agent Dominick Long was there with iron manacles, backed by his twin Thompsons, Bessie and Belle. It's amazing.
Other people refer to them as Bessie and Belle. Like, no.
Yeah, everyone knows their names. You have to imagine, like, how they got so notorious, too, because...
I mean, he's cutting the legs out from underneath people. I would be stunned if someone did that.
You could have a guy who's just famous for having twin Thompson machine guns, but then also someone who constantly tells people what their names are. He would have to go around saying, this one's Bessie and this one's Belle. You can tell by the magazine count.
Every once in a while, he'll be like, don't worry, Belle. We'll
get that Ratchet Briggs.
Yeah. It's so strange.
Yeah. So, again, these scenes are like a couple paragraphs long. It takes you less than a few minutes to read a chapter. And so, in chapter 4, this chapter I noted for basically just being a bunch of questions that the narration asks because that's what we're wondering. You know, because we didn't get to see this scene where Ratchet Briggs escapes from the police van, it's just Dominick Long going through his head, who could have been the killer that night and who could have helped Ratchet Briggs escape.
Yeah.
We then get to maybe one of our only hints at a character for Dominick Long, which is one of the funniest bits because it's so ridiculous and kind of seems like unaware that this isn't something badass. Like it's treated as, oh, Dominick Long, he's so resourceful and so badass. What's he going to do? He doesn't like the way Jericho spins the news about him, so he's going to blackmail him.
Yeah.
But what is the piece of information that he has that he's going to blackmail Jericho with that he doesn't want to get out?
Jericho, the king of purple prose, is a gay man.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
It's really treated like that's the worst thing if people find out.
Yeah. And it's like, hey, it's the 1940s,
yeah.
You know. I'm sure that being gay is, you know...
It's not as accepted back then. He could face ridicule, he could lose credibility, let's say. But that's not given as the reason why he's afraid that this gets out.
And is it something that you would kill someone over, you know? Like,
No.
Is it because Jericho later, you know, has plots of his own?
Right.
You know, and the things that would drive me to kill someone is not being blackmailed for my sexuality.
Yeah.
You know, even in the 1940s.
That's the thing, is it isn't treated as, oh, well, back in those days, people wouldn't have been as understanding.
No.
It talks about how Jericho is ashamed that he's a gay man, and he has a hidden preference for muscles rather than curves. And like how embarrassing that is for him. So it's really, the writing treats this as like, oh man, he's got the fucking secret. What a badass. But it just comes off as, wow, Dominick Long's a fucking asshole.
Yeah. and I also, this is one of the points where I was like, whoa, that's a shitty plot point, because Max Jericho is the king of purple prose and news columnist. I'm sure he can control the spread of information way better than FBI special agent Dominick Long. Like, in a contest of who believes who.
Kim, I think you're thinking a bit too much about this story.
Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry.
Listen.
For a moment, I took my eyes off those twin Thompsons.
Dominick Long is the most badass G-man who ever lived, okay? He has twin Thompsons. Their names are Bessie and Belle. That's all you need to know about this character.
Funny. Max Jericho should have just fired back to Agent Dominick Long and said, if you tell people I'm gay, I'm going to tell people that you love your guns. Like, literally love them.
So, yeah, Dominick Long is packing up his guns. You scroll down the page and you can just see .45 shotgun M1918. It's just obsession with guns, obsession with what goes in the guns, what comes out of the guns.
Yeah.
Nothing of what happens to the characters.
You know, it's so strange because in real life, guns are tools, and I feel like nothing is special about the tool unless it really is pertinent to the story. Like, the fact that his Bessie has a 50-drum magazine doesn't later on play out in some unique way. No. He just keeps shooting that shit.
It just means he can shoot more bullets than the other Thompson.
Yeah, it's so like... and, man.
So, in our earlier discussion on China Strike, when we were talking about how we were going to read this book, I said it was a mystery novel, a mystery thriller sort of thing. I mean, he's an FBI agent. There is tons and tons of exposition talking about how Dominick Long wants to figure out who tipped off Ratchet Briggs to the bank heist and who helped him escape. There's a lot of like
background, you know.
Yeah, it is treated like a mystery. And so we are finally given our red herring, which we talked about in China Strike. There was no red herring. There was no mystery. It was very clear cut, and that has to...
No.
So the red herring we're introduced to is, of course, Whip Carson, who doesn't like G-Man. And I would say this is not a good red herring because you would think, oh, we'll set up this character as not liking him, and then later it'll be someone else who's out to get him. But Whip Carson also wants to fucking murder G-Man. It really talks about how, oh, I'll kill Ratchet Briggs and Dominick Long will be collateral. Dominick Long's got his Thompsons, but I've got my Browning automatic shotgun, which can blow holes in a grizzly bear.
Oh, yeah. I just wish the rest of the story was there, surrounding with weapon descriptions and things like that.
Yeah, because the descriptions of these things, and like you're like, man, I want to see that in a scene. Like, I want to see them fucking face off with their BAR shotgun and then twin Thompsons. That never happens.
Oh, no.
So, I mean, a normal red herring tries to set you up with, Carson doesn't really hate Long, or maybe he just doesn't hate him to that extent. No, he wants to fucking kill Long.
And perhaps in another, you know, in a normal story, I like to say, you would find out that right at the end, Dominick Long and Thing are having a shootout, and then Pollock comes and he's about to shoot Dominick Long, but at the last minute he makes the right decision and you know, goes, oh, no, like, I can overcome my, no, this is a straight up, I want to murder him. That's in my aspirations.
The idea is to give you an expectation of, well, I'm going to see Carson change his mind or something. And that does happen, but we're not given any good reason to think, or like, he doesn't realize, oh, I was wrong for thinking I should fucking kill him because he's more popular than me and his twin Thompsons are more famous than my shotgun. There's never any revelation that's like a problem for him. It's just from one scene to the next. I mean, maybe that does happen, but we don't see it.
Man, to be honest, if a colleague in my workplace had named guns that were famous on the newspaper, I would also be quite jealous that my shotgun didn't also have a newspaper-renowned name.
Yeah, would you go out and fucking murder them?
Oh, if I had a shotgun that could blow holes through grizzly bears, I think I might.
Okay, so we see a scene of Carson loading up his shotgun, and he's gonna go... He's gonna.
That's what every character does in this book. They just load the guns, load them up, and just stroke them, and then at the end,
the longest scenes in this book are just loading up weapons and stroking them, basically.
Yes, Belle, you will have your chance to shoot.
Are you ready, girls?
Oh my god!
So Carson loads up his fucking grizzly bear murderer. And he gets in his car and he's gonna tail Long. Now, we described earlier how Long knows that Carson is tailing him. He already knows the car. Carson doesn't even try to conceal, like, by getting a different car.
I'm just gonna follow you.
I'm just gonna follow you. You already know that I fucking hate you, and I'm a crazy person who might want to take revenge on you with my shotgun. But I'm still gonna get in my own car, and I'm gonna tail the most renowned, most badass, most perceptive G-man who's ever lived, ever. And I'm gonna pretend like he's not gonna know. And Long, again, it's just pages of Carson couldn't stand to be in the spotlight. Was he possibly bright enough to engineer Briggs' escape? It's just like...
Well, tell me if he did,
I'm glad you're asking that question because...
Now I'm thinking that too.
So, I mean, there's a scene break after only like 5 sentences. That's just the scene. There's 5-sentence scene. And then it goes, Max Jericho was scared. No time wasted following up on how Max Jericho is feeling.
Honestly, he can't start a new section or a chapter without telling you what the character is feeling right at that very moment.
Yeah, after everything he'd done to make a hero out of Long, the ungrateful G-man had put the screws to him. It's just...
That bastard.
There's so much going on, and if we saw it played out in scenes, you'd have a little more time to process, but because it's just given in like a text dump, it's really hard to follow what's happening, because you get so much information at once, and you're like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Jericho is planning to write the piece for Long, but he's also going to do something of his own. He says, Jericho had made Long a hero. Now he would make him a goat.
I originally was like, he's going to make him the greatest of all time. Nice.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's what I think of when I hear goat.
It's not like...
Or what? A scapegoat? A scapegoat for, what crime is you're going to put him up for?
That's the thing is, when you read something like this, and when you're used to reading this kind of book like we are, I never know if that's a thing I don't know, like what a goat is referring to, or if it's just a spelling mistake, or... Because there's so many.
Yeah. Or if he's just making up his own terminology. Like, no one's ever said that before, but you do sit there for a moment and you wonder.
So there's another news column.
Love him.
Murderous G-Man throws down the gauntlet. He tries to portray Dominick Long as, just as bad as Ratchet Briggs. And he fucking takes his Thompsons out and he sprays crowds, and he doesn't care who gets hit.
Completely true, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's portrayed like, Max Jericho, he's...
that bastard.
He's telling tall tales about our G-Man, but it's just not the case.
He's like, don't ask the executioner with a G-Man badge, Dominick Long. Yeah, Dominick Long is literally an executioner with those guns.
Yeah, he really is. He blames Dominick Long for getting Tess Montgomery, the singer, killed, which is accurate.
Yeah.
It's not like, he's spinning the news and Tess was just in the crossfire. It describes how Tess got fucking shot up on the block and Long just did nothing, which is probably true. I don't know. I didn't read that scene. It's not here.
Yeah, no, in the book. Like, it's just so strange to get information that you would think is so vital to the...
Yeah.
Your wife getting shot? Why would you not put that in the book? Like, why would you...
And also seeing the transition of, she was Ratchet's lover, now she's Long's lover. Like, that information was so quick to be given that I was like, who is she with? It doesn't tell you that she was a previous lover of Ratchet. It just says she testified against him, and it's so confusing. So Jericho writes this piece for Long, and Long just doesn't give a fuck. He's just the ultimate G-man. He knows that Jasper's just trying to rile him up with his purple prose.
I also love, I'm sorry, but after you read this piece by Jericho, you get this thing and Jericho rips it out of the typewriter, and it says, Stone, I'm not Stone, I mean, Dominick Long.
the MIA hunter, Dominick Long.
Dominick Long wants him to write this, but he's not going to do it that way.
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, we got that. We just read that.
Yeah.
You don't have to put that explaining. We just read that right there. Why are you telling me again?
It's so that you can follow along with the very complicated plot details and character dynamics. So that scene ends saying Jericho, he had to be sure his secret stayed buried, even if it meant Long was buried alongside it.
Yep.
So, yeah, he doesn't want anyone to know he's a homosexual.
And he'll kill people to keep that secret buried.
And then there's almost like a hint to the reader in the next chapter, which begins, "It wasn't hard to figure who tipped Ratchet to the escape attempt."
Wink, wink.
I found it pretty hard to figure that, Kim. I don't know about you.
Yeah, considering that everything else is just told to you immediately, to be like...
The main plot points don't happen in scenes, so of course it's hard for me to figure out.
Oh my god. Yes.
You know, that's the thing about writing a mystery, is mysteries are interesting because you're given all the pieces of the puzzle, but you don't know how to put it together. This is just like you don't get any of the pieces.
Yeah. You get someone briefly mentioning a clue that happened ages ago, but you never got you never got that.
Yeah, that's the thing about a mystery, is like you're like, I have all the pieces, I know all the players,
but how does it all fit?
How does it all fit together? Am I going to discover that Ratchet Briggs is actually a good guy or something like this? And a mystery is fun to resolve at the end because you're like, I was thinking that.
Yeah.
Wow, the author's so clever. They put it right in my face and I didn't see it. Well, in this, there is no mystery because we never get those details that we can secure in the back of our head and access later. It's just like, here's who betrayed who, and you're just supposed to play catch up. We talked in our last discussion about how China Strike seemed to be a bit... The reader was 2 steps ahead of the story. You would see something happen, and then you would have the fallout of that. Characters trying to figure out what just happened. And it's like, well, I already know what happened.
I already know what happened.
I don't need to continue.
Get me to the next part. Yeah.
Just get me to the next thing. I want to be surprised by what happens.
Yeah.
This is like, the story is so far ahead of the reader that you don't know what's happening.
What's going on at all.
There's no way to even tell what's happening.
And it's so strange because you get these, you don't know what's going on, and then you get this massive info dump in the form of a newspaper article, and then it's too much to swallow in one bite, so you still don't know what's going on. All you know is that he's got Bessie and Belle, and they'll sort it out when the time comes.
Yeah.
Because you get this constant reminder every once in a while. Long will go to his guns and give him a good stroking, and then say, Soon,
my girls. You're ready to go to work.
Soon, my girls.
But so, I mean, like you said, there's so much condensed information being relayed that's kind of how Chapter 7 is as well. In the last time we saw Long, he's like, who could have helped Ratchet Briggs?
Yeah.
And in this scene, he's already got it figured out.
Yeah.
We never saw his process. He
didn't do any detective work.
No, and like the point of him contacting Jericho to write that piece was so that he could draw out Briggs and maybe find out who helped him. But no, all the detective work is done off page. He just already knows what happened. He shows up to like a bank and it's so confusing because this isn't a scene where Dominick Long walks into the bank and you see the conversation between him and the banker and their interactions give you a sense that Dominick Long has figured out. No, it's really just like Long invoked the color of authority to the manager who revealed that the corrections guard at the jail was financially poor. However, the warden was in debt, and when a very large unexplained deposit was made into his account, it gave him an idea. Dominick Long pushes the bank manager to check the accounts, and he sees some disturbing deposits. Like that could be a scene.
Yeah. That
could be a scene where he walks in and they have this conversation and it's really tense and like you get to see G-Man like
detective work in action. Yeah, like he might even pull out Bessie, he might
tell me who it was and that kind of shit.
He might unleather something.
Yeah, unleather that 387. Show us some character, show us some personality. That doesn't happen.
No.
We are given a summary of a scene that probably happened.
Yeah.
And it says the muddy waters were clearing. Maybe for G-Man, but I am fucking swamped.
I'm in a bog right now. I'm holding on to those twin Thompsons.
So he tracks down the warden, I guess, and it's so confusing. I read this, and I'm reading it again, and I still am having a hard time finding out.
He tracks down the warden, and the warden reveals to him that he allowed Briggs to
rob the bank.
Yeah, well, no, he allowed him to simply make phone calls or something from the
It's so confusing. It doesn't matter. The point is, the bankers are corrupt. G-Man is seeding out the corruption, and he has figured out a way to find out who is on Ratchet Briggs' side.
I also love, he tracks down the warden. He goes in there, and he accuses him. Well, he doesn't accuse him of anything. It just says, "Why you think I'm here?" ? And that instantly makes the warden visibly pale.
Yeah, he buckles up.
He gets scared, and then it says, "Long saw the carotid artery above Harrison's too tight collar begin pulsing." And I just couldn't get that out of my head. I just imagined the warden sitting there with this thing oh, and I was like, what is that? What's got an alien inside you, bro?
Oh my god.
Now that's purple prose.
Yeah. So then there's a really funny part where, again, the only things that we are given an idea that Dominick Long is an individual who is distinct from other individuals, like his only character development, is that he then uses the corruptibility of this warden to his advantage. He does something like he makes a long distance call from the warden's phone and like it charges him a shitload of money. It says something like, the warden's office phone bill was going to be far higher than normal. But Long figured that was a cheap price for Harrison to pay, and he would ensure every penny came out of Harrison's pocket. He'd worry about Harrison's corruptibility later.
Oh, and by the way, he doesn't. He doesn't do anything with that. No.
Doesn't do any of that. Dominick Long is just a fucking dick.
Yeah.
He's just like, I'm just gonna make this dude's phone bill super high. And
yeah, and sorry, what? As if he's not going to use the phone again, like, anytime soon? How big could that bill be before he has to use the phone? I don't know.
It doesn't make any sense.
He's so petty. He's so, it's the sort of guy that just, is going to pull the paper towels out of the bathroom or something like that. You really got that water good, man. Good detective work.
Yeah, fuck ending these criminals' lives quickly and painlessly. I'm going to blow up their legs first. Okay. So G-Long is a fucking asshole.
Yeah. G-Long. Goddamn.
So ridiculous. So he goes... What does he do? He goes... Oh my god.
He reads Jericho's
I'm scrolling through here and I just see lines like, he could feel the craving for the caress of Bessie and Belle. Like he's getting fucking horny for touching his submachine guns.
They're an extension of himself, dude. He feels the craving for their embrace.
Yeah.
He reads the blaze, and he grumbles it. He sort of shrugs it off, doesn't he? He doesn't really he sort of is like, well, that turned out shitty, and then he cuts straight out to FBI Chief Jasper Pollock, who also slams the copy of the blaze down.
Yeah, there's a lot of papers slamming in this story. At this point, G-Long has already figured out who the informant of Briggs is, Ratchet Briggs.
Yeah.
Someone helped him escape, and we aren't shown or even told at this point who that was. G-Long's already got it figured out. He mused for a while that it was Carson. Again, we talked this might be a red herring, but it's very obvious. The next scene is Jasper Pollock slamming that copy of the blaze down.
Yeah.
And it's not structured like a reveal of a twist. It's just like, oh my god, Jasper Pollock, the police chief, is the half-brother of Ratchet Briggs. So it says something like, Calvin Briggs, Ratchet Briggs, forced Jasper Pollock to help him escape. And he did it because he was scared of Briggs.
Yeah.
Although Pollock is a bit corrupt, he's taking money for, giving him the inside scoop. It's so confusing because earlier in the story, Pollock is like, well, I'm going to put Long on administrative leave, and he's still going to go after that Ratchet Briggs. And here it's talking about how he allowed Long to go rogue so that he could confront Briggs's gang so that Long would kill Briggs. But then he still helped Briggs escape? It doesn't make any sense, basically.
No. And again, I really honestly, I felt it at the end of the story, and I felt it in other places too, that it seems like, you know, he just had this like flashy idea, but didn't actually have a story to back it up. So none of the side characters really have their goals realistically aligned with themselves.
Yeah.
They're all just to serve the plot. And so you get these instances where characters do things that are seemingly against their own wants.
Yeah. Well, you have to remember, Kim, it's really hard to write a story. And it's hard when you have a plot synopsis to translate that into scenes.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's much faster to just make the synopsis the scene.
Yeah.
And just tell us what happened or suggest to us that things happened rather than actually write the scene itself. Of course, the scenes that are worth writing are the fucking crazy shootouts.
Oh, yeah.
At the beginning and end.
And it's funny that you can have such a good time writing these descriptions and writing all of those things that you want to write, but then go, well, all of this other shit, just, yeah, let's get things going. Come on. Yeah, he did this and that and this and that. And then back to the guns.
Back to the Thompsons.
Yeah, back to the Thompsons. And you can feel that when he's writing it. Every time Dominick Long strokes his guns or refers back to them or something, I feel like that's actually the author going, I want to get back to the shooting or the Thompsons and not waste time on any of this detective bullshit, you know?
Yeah, fuck all the, sleuthing.
Fuck all the, sleuthing. Just give me the guns.
Just get back to the guns, get back to the shotties and the Thompsons.
Why didn't you do that then? Why didn't you just write a story? No one is telling you can't do that. You don't have to disguise your book as a sleuthing detective novel.
I guess the idea is that with more context, the shootouts are more interesting, but there's no context other than a bunch of info dumps about who these people are.
Yeah.
So then again, from chapter 8 to chapter 9, a lot of important shit happens that we don't see. Whip Carson, who last time we saw him, was chasing down Long as his tail, planning to fucking assassinate him so he could steal the spotlight, is now in Long's car and they're buddies. They're both sitting in there. Long's got his Thompsons and
and Carson has his BAR.
Yeah, his BAR shotgun. And they're off to go get Pollock now.
Yeah.
I guess Long informed Carson of his knowledge that Pollock was the mole, and now they're both on the side of justice to take down Pollock. But one, that doesn't cancel out Carson's motivation, which is, I hate G-Man. I'm gonna kill him so that I get the spotlight. He still wants the spotlight. He doesn't care about the justice. He doesn't care about taking down Pollock.
Yeah.
So they're friends now.
But again, all of these chapters, every time you start one, it's so confusing. You just don't know. Because
you're playing catch up. If we had seen the scene where Carson pulls up and Long gets out and Carson goes up to him with his shotgun and Long stands there.
With his Thompsons.
No, he stands there stalwart with no Thompsons, and he calmly explains to Carson how Pollock is really the bad guy we should go after.
Yeah.
That never happens. We don't get to see that. It's just the next scene, they're friends.
Yeah, that's happened, and here we go.
Yeah, and I really want to read this part because it is really the best part of the book. When Jasper is reflecting on how Calvin Ratchet Briggs is his brother. But does Jasper also, he joins forces with Calvin, doesn't he? Or do they still hate each other? I honestly can't remember.
I don't know.
It's so hard to tell where people are in terms of who they like because we don't get any of that information in scenes. If you had spent 30 minutes to an hour reading a chapter where you understood the dynamic between Pollock and Briggs and how they're on the different sides of the law, you would remember that. But we can't even remember because it's just so short. It's so just packed into this little chapter.
Yeah.
Jasper's basically talking about why he did help his brother. He says something like, blood turned out to be thicker than the law.
Which is honestly one of the best lines in the entire... This whole section is really, really good. Yeah, so
that one's genuinely good. And then there's a follow-up couple of lines that are really good. Blood had rammed the prison van. Blood put the Tommy gun on the plank table near Briggs's hand. Blood had driven his revenge on the man who betrayed him. Blood and money. Money always made blood thicker. So there is some colorful writing here, and that is some fun stuff. That's why this book is fun to read. it's just confusing.
Yeah.
We finally get to the scene that we've been waiting for the whole time.
Yeah.
Which is the shootout.
Yeah.
That concludes the encounter that we saw in the beginning of this story.
Another reason why I love some of these parts is that Bessie and Belle get their own, like, as if they're controlling themselves. It's always like, Bessie moved to watch Briggs, and then the other gun stayed on this person, and it's so like
yeah. Carson and G-Man Long show up. Carson's got his shoddy, G-Man's got his Thompsons, and Pollock takes a step forward, saying, this isn't what you think. He's trying to explain himself, and it says Bessie. Yeah, again, the sentence is supposed to say Bessie's muzzle moved to cover Jasper, who froze in place. But the text that's here is Bessie muzzled moved to cover Jasper.
Yeah.
So again, it's
just all through. I mean, yeah.
This kind of shit is everywhere. While Bessie stayed steady on Briggs. So he's got his twin Thompsons, and he's training them on both of them. He's got them both pinned down. He has a bit of a monologue talking about how he figured out that they're the Moonshine family and all this shit.
Yeah.
And then we are treated to another twist.
The twist of the century, yeah.
A completely non-obvious, completely non-telegraphed twist, which is that Max Jericho was the van rammer that helped Briggs escape, and he has now shown up with a gun pressed against the spine of Long.
Oh, yeah.
Long already knows this, of course, because he's the top G-man. And he says, "Hello, Jericho," without having to turn around. And they have dialogue about how you drove the van and
splattered his girlfriend. And
and then the thing that happens is Long takes a dive to get out of the way of Jericho's gun. And Jericho just fucking lets it off and blasts Jasper Pollock instead, accidentally. And he yells at Dominick Long, this is the actual dialogue, "You'll never use being queer against me again," Jericho said.
As he's like shooting.
Yeah, he's blasting his weapon at Long.
"You'll never call me queer! Boom, 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 boom!"
Yeah, bang, bang. And it's like, isn't this the secret information you don't want anyone to know, and you're just shouting it out? Like,
while shooting, yeah.
So then the Thompsons are Bessie and Belle, they're on the ground.
Yeah, and this is another perfect example of where you can look down the page and you see point 38, BAR, Bessie, Belle, point 45. There's a Tommy gun in there.
Yep.
And I mean, this is about, 100 words.
Yeah, the scene is really short.
And on this little page, yeah.
It's the longest scene, but it's still really short. Essentially, everyone's guns just go fucking wild. Carson's BAR splatters Jericho's head like an overripe melon.
Oh, yeah.
And Ratchet Briggs lets off his Tommy gun towards Carson, who is trying to roll out of the way. Long, disarmed from Bessie and Belle, whips out his backup guns, his .45 and his .38, and he's dual-wielding them, blasting back as he rolls out of the way.
I don't think that Dominick Long can actually use a single weapon at a time. He has to have two guns and two hands.
Yeah. So Briggs tries to escape. Everyone else is dead.
And and I love how Long shouts his dead fiance's name.
Yeah, well, we get that because Briggs runs off to this barn to get a car so he can run over Long. Long rolls to catch up with Bessie and Belle.
I can't wait for the guns to start talking.
Once they're safely secured in his arms, he yells out, "Tess!" shouting at the top of his lungs.
Firing.
While he empties hot shells from his twin Thompsons into the approaching vehicle. And then Bessie and Belle's deadly chattering was joined by the cannon-like bursts of Whip Carson's
BAR shotgun. So now it's like they're both, going at it.
They're blasting at him. It's just everything is going crazy. Briggs is approaching in his car. His brains get fucking exploded out the back of his head and over the windshield. The car flips.
Yeah, because the car has a cow catcher on the front. Now, a cow catcher is the thing that you would see on front of an old steam train. It's like a plow.
Right.
And used for literally catching cows. So not running them over, bumping them off.
Yeah.
So that they are not killed. Now, this man has it on the front of his car. Reasons unknown. And it comes back to bite him instantly because the cow catcher digs into the ground and flips the car.
Yeah.
Now, it also says, when they're shooting the car, that the car is 10 yards away from them. So they shoot him, the car digs into the ground, flips over, and in this 10-yard shot, they're also still shooting, and apparently time slows down.
Yeah, it describes it as going in slow motion.
Yeah, and they shoot his body, like, as it is tossed from the car, and they literally shoot it in the air as it flies from the vehicle, as the car flips over, and then he lands on the ground, and the car lands on top of him.
Yeah, it's fucking epic.
In 10 yards. Figure that one out.
And then what happens? What is the resolution to this? Do we get to see the unraveling of the police department as our police chief is taken from his top position? And
what about the corrupt warden?
Yeah. What about Max Jericho and the crumbling of the news operation? And
or maybe simply we'll see that Dominick Long has turned a better page. Maybe he's found a new girlfriend. Who knows?
Maybe with Max Jericho gone and no one to put G-Man in the spotlight, him and Carson could get along.
Yeah, exactly. And they could actually, work together as they've now done.
And be a force for good, and they could both share the spotlight together.
But we come to the end of this amazing shootout, and done.
The reason we're speculating on all of those resolutions is
because the story literally finishes right there.
It's almost like it finishes mid-sentence.
Yeah. What is the last sentence, actually?
The last paragraph is, as Bessie's drum, again, as Bessie drum, there's no S.
As Bessie drum magazine ran dry, the sound of heavy silence hit Long. He stood motionless, waiting for his body to jump-start his senses. Eventually, he heard the pings and hisses of dying metal and the sounds of Carson calling his name.
And then you go to the next page and it says, a look at Hot Pursuit, a different book by Paul Bishop.
Yep.
That's the end of the story. It's really like kind of in the middle of a scene here.
Carson, what were you going to say?
Is he calling his name because he's in a murderous trance and he needs to be woken up from it?
Yeah. Like, what's going on?
Is he yelling out his name because in the crossfire, Long has caught a bullet and he's bleeding from his shoulder?
And find out never again in the not coming book. Find out in the never going to be released sequel to Dominick Long, Bucketful of Bullets, G-Man, Super Soprano, Amazing Detective.
So there you have A Bucketful of Bullets, a Dominick Long G-Man story by Paul Bishop.
Story, I don't know if it's...
Story, yeah.
A Bucketful of Bullets? Definitely. A Dominick Long G-Man? Definitely. Story? Nuts.
It's more of like a Dominick Long G-Man summary.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate because, if we break down why we're slightly disappointed or why we felt tricked, it's because we want more.
Yeah.
We weren't reading this like, oh, this sucks. The writing is so bad and how ridiculous. No, like, we want more of this shit because it is entertaining as hell. In the way that China Strike, that was entertaining because it completely misses the mark of what it's shooting for.
Yeah.
This is entertaining. Well, the parts that...
It has these little smidgens of...
These little bookends of really entertaining gunfights and like over-the-top action that's self-aware that it's over-the-top.
Yeah.
But it's missing so much of the actual story around it. All of the story is taking place in scenes we don't get to see.
Yeah.
And even the scenes we do see are not scenes. They're just summaries of scenes.
Yeah.
So it's really unfortunate because I wanted to read more of A Bucketful of Bullets.
And you never get to. Yeah. And now I also just want to quickly go through the reviews because, again, this is clearly either friend reviewed or just by whoever he could get to do it. But there's 5-star, 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 5-star review, and then another excellent story by Paul Bishop, and then 5 stars. I liked it a lot. It kept my interest throughout. And these people have not read the book.
No.
It's nothing against the author, or nothing against the publisher, nothing against Amazon, but come on, guys. Stop giving your friends reviews for books that you haven't read simply because you're complicit in tricking someone. If I sold a something on Amazon, a power drill, and the power drill didn't work. And I told you to drop a review on my power drill.
This is an excellent power drill. Really got me drilling power.
And then someone buys it and goes, what the fuck? This power drill doesn't work, you know?
Yeah, because, I mean, you have well, this is a confusing review because it's 3 stars, and it says, don't buy it. Poor choice, was no mystery to it. Then why did you give it 3 stars?
3 stars, yeah. Why? Yeah.
Now, you have other reviews that are like, this is exactly the opposite of what you want to read right before bed. It's a very hot little story, especially if you're a weapons buff. Well, that's coming from a more genuine place, I suppose, but I don't think you would enjoy this story if you're a weapons buff. I think you would enjoy this story if you enjoy, like, romantic personification of weapons.
Yeah.
Because the weapons side isn't so technical.
No.
They're not like cleaning the guns and, oh, he's a weapons technical specialist. No, he just has a twin Thompson setup, and that's it.
And, you know, if you are a weapon specialist, then you'll know how silly it is to wield any 2 weapons together because it's pretty much useless.
Yes. Yeah, you can't aim at all, and it really gives you the idea that he's like, well, I got one on this arm and this one, and I can aim at 2 people.
And I can shoot down a whole mob of gang members in one quick swoop. You know, anyone that's actually interested in guns or weapons at all will know that that's ridiculous, you know, and it's just hilarious. So I don't know who this is really made for.
I think one of the most accurate ones, at least for me personally, is this one that says 3 stars. The story moves quick. Some action, some typos, no depth. 2.5 stars about does it.
Yeah.
That's about as clear as it gets.
Yeah.
Some of these ones talk about how it's really well written. The plot really kept them guessing and hooked them early. I think you'll enjoy the suspense. I was given an advanced copy in exchange for an honest review.
An enjoyable fast action short story. Bishop creatively provides a great few minutes entertainment, in 2 different words, in this fun, action-packed short story. Appropriately named, this tale focuses on the use of 2 Thompson submachine guns with the names. It's worth the read.
It's like, at least the author knows that that's the selling point.
Yeah.
You know, the synopsis goes, when his fiancée Tess was murdered, Dominick Long turned to 2 other women, Bessie and Belle, his twin Thompson submachine guns blasting death from 50-round drums to kill a killer. And
but again, the book would have been so much better if there was way less of trying to be something that it's not, and just go and just go on a rampage. Just go rampage.
Yeah.
Just take your twins out and just, you know, totally go vigilante mode. Try to kill the guy that's killed your fiancé, and do it like that. Why have this?
Don't try to trick us into thinking we're reading like a plot-driven mystery.
Yeah.
Where there's no depth to the characters, there's no depth to the intrigue. There's no mystery.
Yeah. I don't know if I would suggest anyone to read this book. I think because it's so cheap, just buy it, read the first part, the last part, and toss it, you know?
Maybe read the scene where Long is like putting together his outfit and he's like strapping up the 38 in his boot and the 45 on his shoulder holster.
Yeah. All that stuff is amazing. I really, it's just, you can't read it without a smile. It's too funny.
Yeah. Now, we could talk about the author a bit. So, similar to Stephen Mertz in China Strike, when you click his library of work, many of these stories look very similar.
Very similar.
He seems to have a larger, like, series that maybe has a bigger following. Well, because Paul Bishop says in his bio that he was an LAPD detective. Again, just like Stephen Mertz, it says he's a regular speaker at writing conferences.
Yeah.
Which I wouldn't attend those writing conferences, to be honest. I would be more interested in hearing him talk about police work. And, you know, again, I'm disappointed that he doesn't bring more of that knowledge to this story. So I'm of 2 minds about it. In one way, I'm like, okay, this could be an interesting story. And the other way, I know it's not. So just give me more of the submachine gun blasting. But then I didn't get that. But so that's about all I have to say on A Bucket Full of Bullets. So, what's next?
So, next week we'll be talking about Sword Immortal Online.
What is that?
It's a disaster. That's what it is. This is a book that I insisted Brady shouldn't read for his own safety.
And you're going to subject our listeners to it instead.
I'm going to subject my listeners to whatever I damn well please, and they can stop listening whenever they choose.
I think they're gonna love it.
Thank you everyone for listening and supporting the show. And please, if you can, support us on Patreon, and doubly so, share our podcast with your friends. It's a huge help, and thank you to all of those who already do that. If you have a book you want us to look at, share it with us on one of our platforms and we'll consider it for the show. Thanks!